Hello everybody and welcome back to our channel. And today we're going to be talking about Child's Play 3. Now, let's jump right into it. So, Child's Play 3 opens up 8 years after Chucky's previous death, and Justin Wallen takes over the part of Andy Barclay. I'm not immensely crazy about his performance, although I do like this movie. It's sort of a guilty pleasure. It's one of the movies where you turn your mind off and you kind of end up enjoying it. The premise of the movie is that Andy Barclay, after the events of the last movie, has been sent to military school. And while he's in military school, he gets a package. This package is, of course, Chucky. Because we're friends to the end, Andy. You know, right? So he comes in and he's ready to finish what he started. After all, he still believes that at this point, Andy Barclay is the only body he can jump into. But this is a very interesting movie because this is the movie where he kind of figures out that maybe that ain't entirely true. Maybe that isn't entirely true at all. And it's really cool because it presents us with some interesting kills, an interesting plot overall. The movie isn't the best, but in terms of Child's Play movies, it's still pretty good. What Chucky actually finds out in this movie is that he doesn't have to jump into the body of Andy Barclay. But instead, he could jump into the body of a little kid named Ronald. Because Ronald actually is tasked with giving Andy Barclay the package that's supposed to be delivered to him, this package containing Chucky, only he recognizes it as potentially being a good guy doll and does what any little kid would do. He says, I'm going to open it up, and he tries to open it up. So then after he does that, then what we get to see is Andy Barclay having to rescue this kid. And I said there were a lot of interesting kills in the movie, a lot of interesting things go on in the movie. But, you know, in terms of plot, it's not real heavy. Essentially, it's military school the way you expect military school to be in a situational comedy. And that proves not to necessarily be a really horrible thing either. Just to be clear, the movie, even though it's not the best, it is one of my personal favorite Child's Play movies and probably one of my favorite horror movies, in fact. Part 2 is great. Part 2, the problem I always have with Part 2 is that a lot of the beginning with the home life and everything, I'm kind of waiting for the finale. And once the finale in Part 2 comes, it comes with a boom, you know. It's great. And this movie just kind of, to me, feels like a much more fast-paced movie. It only has one or two spots where it drags. So if you want a little bit of cheesy horror movie, cheesy little slasher movie, this was kind of the beginning of what we would ultimately get in the Child's Play series. That good old-fashioned campy fun that we started to recognize as Chucky really began in this movie. Before that, he was kind of played for scares. But then after this movie we got Bride of Chucky, where he was much more laughable, but at the same time, a very cool, interesting character to watch. This would continue on throughout this Child's Play series, and it works. It really works. I should also note that in the second one, we kind of got a hint at the fact that they were starting to mass produce some Chuckies. We saw the factory at the end. This premise is continued in this movie. In fact, this was kind of the movie where Mancini originally wanted to actually showcase an army of Chuckies, an idea that would ultimately be brought to fruition in the Cult of Chucky movie. But up until this point, it hadn't been brought into play, but it was something he intended. Now, I should also note that this is one of the very few horror novelizations I have read. The book for this is actually pretty good. It was written by Michael J. Costello, and just like Child's Play 2, the author added some of his own parts. There's some things that really don't show up in the film. We, for example, get a prologue with a rat. And then, the rat's chewing on pieces of Chucky. The blood then leaks out. The remains somehow go into another doll. And that's really different than what we ultimately see in the opening of the movie. There's also a scene where Andy shoots Chucky in the chest and causes his body to fall. He shatters into blood, plastic, and chunks of metal. And interestingly enough, I always thought that that the ending of this movie would have been really great. And this is just a little FYI. I always thought the ending of this movie would be really great if in the next movie Chucky jumped into a teddy bear. I don't know why. Kind of stupid. But is it really? Because ultimately we ended up getting a Buddy Bear in the Child's Play remake. Just something I found a little interesting. When I was reading the book, it's kind of where I wanted to see it go when I read the end of the book, with the little epilogue and everything that they had. Now, that being said, it's not a bad movie at all. Very well worth your time. One of my personal favorite to go to horror movies for the guilty pleasure of it all. It's kind of cheesy, but then nothing wrong with a little bit of horror movie cheese. The Jason Voorhees movies are at their best when they're cheesy and horrible. And so are a lot of other different horror franchises. So, I urge you to watch this movie if you haven't seen it and really take the time to enjoy it for all the campiness that it has to offer. A definite must-see for any Child's Play fan. Now, that being said, that's where we're going to end today's video. If you're new here, we talk about all things fandom, and we talk about them in a positive way. And a portion of all of our proceeds, when we start to get paid for this channel, will go to Tourette's research, because we want to make a difference, one video at a time. Now, that being said, hit that like button, hit that notification bell, and subscribe to this channel, because Miko says we need more subscribers. And you don't want to disappoint Miko. Oh, and leave us a comment in the comment box, because for some reason YouTube tends to like it when you do that. And we like to hear from you. So, everybody, be safe out there. And at the end of the day, remember, fandom is family.